Before we start this video, a large thank you to Chris and Quintus for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. Hello guys, so in this video we're going to be doing some polishing of the project. Now, to start off the video, I want to show you a graphic. As you can see on the screen here, and this is just a rough representation of what we have. This isn't all the scripts, but you see I have the character or player or enemy manager in the center, and then I have their respective components to the left and the right. So the weapon slot manager, the locomotion manager, etc., etc. Now, I'm going to show you something. This is what it kind of looks like right now when we have all of our scripts calling each other. So what I'm trying to say is, basically on the combat manager, for example, we might need to use the locomotion manager, and we might also need to use the inventory manager. And then on the inventory manager, we might need to call upon the combat manager and the locomotion manager. So if I enable this, there you go. You can see it's quite messy, and there's nothing wrong with this at all. It will still function perfectly fine. It's just when we start getting into deeper and deeper layers of logic, this can get really troublesome, confusing, and it just kind of is a waste of memory. Not very much at all, like a very minute amount, but it's unnecessary. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it go from this to more like this. So basically, in my other project that I'm dealing with Rob, we have the character player / AI manager, the component that hosts all the other components of your character. And then those components are set to public, so any other script, if, for example, you wanted to access the inventory manager and you were on the combat manager, you would simply type in player for player manager .combat manager or .inventory manager. And the same is true for every other script. So this creates a nice, easy, and clean way to access everything. And we're not calling multiple scripts 5,000 times. The only thing we're calling on each component of a script, if you will, or a character, is the manager. And then from the manager, we access everything else. So in this video, we're going to fix a couple of bugs, and then we're going to basically make the functionality behave this way. And this will be a little bit of work. It will take us some time for sure. It's a very simple process, just kind of tedious. So bear with me, but it will bear very nice, good fruit towards the end. And when we get into a bit more dense stuff, it's just going to make our life so much easier, and it will look so much easier to read. It's just better in every way. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And before we actually jump into this aspect of the video, we're going to fix a couple of bugs. Okay, guys. So the first thing we're going to check out is a very old bug. We did a lot of upgrading and changing to the way we equip stuff over the series. And we made this equipment UI a long time ago. So if I pick up a weapon here and I go and press the equipment screen, you can see there's only one icon showing here for the right hand. And also, furthermore, if I click this weapon, it actually doesn't work. It gives me an index error saying the index is out of range. So this is a problem because if we actually go and open up the player UI here now, and we go to where we have this equipment screen, there's actually supposed to be 4 slots, 2 for the right hand, 2 for the left. So your offhand and your main hand. And if we actually enable this game object here, you will see that, yes, all 4 of them are there. Now, I have a very good idea where this is too. I believe we're accidentally disabling a game object when there's no weapons in our respective hand. And since we have one weapon in the right hand, we're not disabling this one. And if I pop open the script here, over here it's the game object set active false. And that is the hand equipment slot UI. Make sure you erase that. That was the culprit. So now if I go back into the game, and I go to my equipment window, we have 4. But we still have a problem if I were to click on this weapon. If I double-click this error, it says, again, we have an index out of range. Now, there's a couple ways to do this. You could just erase these 2 lines of code and resync your weapons some other way. As you can see, our index is on -1 right now. And I can't recall why we initiated on -1, but we actually don't need to erase this. Instead, what we can do, if my presumption is correct, is we can change that -1 to a 0, and I think nothing should go wrong there, and then it will sync just fine. So if I go into the equipment screen and I go and try to equip this weapon in the left hand, you can see it's fine. I've erased the code though. We don't get the error anymore. However, it won't sync the weapon if I were to switch it in my main hand. So now I'm going to go again, and I'll put this sword in my main hand where my straight sword is currently equipped. And because we're not resyncing the weapon, see how it actually won't change the weapon until I've actually changed up the click slots. So bring this code back here if you've erased it. And what we're going to do, you see how it's calling upon our current left weapon index. It's because it's -1, there can't be a position or a weapon in the -1 index. That's why this is happening. So what we can do is just initialize this as 0. And be warned, if you change it in the script you're going to have to change it in the inspector too, most likely, because it's already been initialized and we've already like played, and Unity's kind of weird like that. So if you notice it's not working, check the inspector. Mine's still at -1. If I change that to 0 and 0, this should fix the problem. Now I'm going to go into the game here now. I'm going to go to the equipment screen and pop in this weapon in the first slot, and no error, and the weapon is equipped fine. So that is one bug out of the way. I'm getting this one done because we're going to go and actually basically expand upon our UI system after this video. And that error is just because I don't have an animator controller put on this weapon. That's nothing to do with the code. Okay, so now the next bug is if I actually click can rotate here, you'll notice it doesn't affect anything. This is on the player manager. I'm actually not sure how this came across. And if I switch weapons to the right hand, you'll see I can no longer rotate. So there's a couple things going on here. For whatever reason, we're actually calling upon the can rotate on the animator manager. So let's erase that and make sure we're calling it here. I'm also just going to move it up here. I'm just going to drink a sip of tea, just one moment. And then on the animator manager, or the character animator manager rather, sorry, let's make sure we erase our can rotate. And wherever we were using that, let's replace that with the can rotate on the player manager. So I'm not sure why we did that. That was probably an early mistake on my part. I put it in two places at once accidentally. So let's go ahead and put player manager. And I'm sorry if my voice starts to break up if I talk for a long time. I need to drink some tea. Hopefully that'll keep me going. So if I go into the game here now, you can see that the can rotate is synced. But if I switch the weapon again, the same problem persists. And this is because, and this took me a while to figure out, defaultly on our animator controller, we actually have the can rotate not enabled, and we're actually syncing the can rotate from the animator itself, like the humanoid controller, the animator component. And I think in a video a long time ago, I just turned it on in here. But what's happening, we can delete these two, by the way, the right arm idle, both of these, because we're getting our animations now from our weapon, as you can remember. So these idles are not needed. The left hand one can stay, but the right hand, we don't need that anymore. So this took me a while to find. What you want to do is if you go to your sword controller here, then go to humanoid, you'll see if I just click on this actual animator controller, and then I go to the animator window, the default can rotate is not on. So when we're switching a weapon, the override takes the parameters of the original controller, which is humanoid, and it goes back to changing the bool to can rotate to false. So that's why that's happening. And then you can rotate it fine. So if you guys had that bug, that's why it's happening. Some of you probably figured that out. It took me a good 10 minutes, honestly, so that's kind of funny. Okay, moving swiftly along. Let's see what else I have here on my list, whatever you guys sent me. Okay, so right now we have a lock-on issue, and if I kill this gentleman and he dies, I stay locked on. Now, we're not going to fix that in this video because we're going to start, I don't know why I introduced it, but we're going to start the framework I mentioned in the earlier part of the video. I'm showing you this because this is all tied together to what we're going to set up. So the is dead bool, for example, is on the character stat manager. We're going to move that to the character manager instead. I want all flags to be on the character manager. This is the main component of the character. You can write status or is dead, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to give it its own header, and I'm going to save that. We're going to be jumping around to a lot of scripts in this video. I just want to let you guys know we're going to be changing a lot. So this is going to be a process of patience. Now, wherever you see is dead and you're getting an error, you can see here now we have all these public scripts on our player manager. Well, we want to reference everything that references another script on our player, enemy, or character manager. So on the enemy manager and on the player manager and on the character manager, make all your variables that reference other components, Locomotion, Animator Manager, etc. public. And any other script that wants to reference these, reference them through your main manager. This will save on memory, it'll save on calling the stuff, and it's a lot neater, it looks a lot nicer, it's so much more organized. We're not going to do every single thing in this video, but we're going to hit most of it. A couple things I'm going to leave, like the boss manager, because, or some components of it, because that's not a fully completed system yet, and I have plans for that. But anyway, I digress. You don't actually need me right now for the large portion of this video if you know what to do, but if you want to follow along too, that's absolutely fine. So you'll get what I'm doing when you watch it for a few minutes. We're going for the enemy stats manager, for example, here. We're going to reference the enemy manager. We're going to delete any other script, okay? So just reference the enemy manager, and that's it. And now, I'm actually just going to rename it enemy for short, because that'll look nicer too with the naming syntax. But now, is dead. We're going to say enemy.isDead. Enemy boss manager will be enemy.enemyBossManager. And the trend continues. This is because we can just call all these scripts one time then on the main manager and not have to call them individually all the time we set up new scripts. So the more scripts you have, the more convenient this becomes. So let's just go down through everything now. And we don't have the enemy animator manager to public. Oh, we do. I incorrectly named it. Just going to rename that to enemy animator manager. I'm going to take a sip of tea. Okay, and it's enemy boss manager. And we're going to do the same thing, just copy and paste the enemy dot, and then go down through all this. And this is going to be the concept now for most of this video. We're going to do this with the character, the base classes, the player, for the player, obviously, and the enemy for, obviously, the enemy. Enemy stats manager, don't need that anymore. We just need is dead because that's now on the character manager base class. Enemy dot, enemy boss manager, you get it, the trend does continue. And again, this is going to look so much nicer. We're going to destroy like probably over 100 variables that we will no longer need to call on start and awake, like legitimately that many. Okay, so on the character stats manager, again, let's erase this. We don't need the character animator manager. What we need is the character manager. And then on the character manager, which we can just shorten to character, we're going to reference the character animator manager from that. So since this is the base class of our player and our enemy, because remember, our player and our enemy do share some values, and we get these values from this base class, we're going to treat the base classes the same as we would treat our player or enemy. Meaning, if the base class wants to reference something on the animator manager, then we'll get it through the character manager first. So let's open that up now. We can make both of these public. And this is going to start stacking up, obviously. You're going to see this be just as populated in the end as the player and the enemy manager. Okay. So our player manager, I think we started this before. It's actually already quite populated. We kind of have a lot of this process. We started it in one housekeeping video, but now we're really going to nail it. So over here now on the character manager, let's go down to the awake method. Actually, I think that's good. Let's just go and see what errors we got. Let's double click this. So is dead on the character stats manager. So we'll say character dot is dead. Okay, because we're calling the character manager and we've called it character. Now let's just click another error and see where we go. Is dead. Again, it's the same one. That's because we moved our is dead bool from the stats manager to the character manager, and that's just preference. I like having all the flags on the main manager so we can see it for debugging purposes. Everything's easy to access. Character.is dead. Same thing. You guys get the trend. I'm going to keep talking to walk you through it, but a lot of you will know what to do as I'm speaking. You won't really need to actually pay attention as much as you are. You can just kind of listen with me. Character.is dead. Let's keep clicking these errors and keep figuring them out. A lot of these are is dead errors because we had this called on basically every function where we take damage. So this one is, we're on the player stats manager, and that will be player manager.is dead, or player is dead, sorry. I'm going to rename this to player instead of player manager because the naming syntax will make a lot more sense. It's just like you want to access the player's inventory, you go player.player inventory. You want to access the player's animator manager, you'd say player.player animator manager. It even sounds nice when you say it out loud like that. Okay, so I'm going to save that again, click these errors. We have the character stats manager is dead, and this is on the character effects manager. So let's erase the character stats manager. And again, this is on the character effects manager. Let's call upon our character manager, and let's do the same thing. We would just say character dot is dead. And anywhere that we wanted to reference the character stats manager, if we did it all, we will simply say character dot character stats manager. But we might reference that here. I'm actually not sure. Maybe in the poison buildup. We'll see in a second. Okay, so this animator.setBool, we just erased the player stats manager. It's just is dead. Save. Okay, and there we go. Yes. Okay, so we're actually accessing the transform, so we actually don't need that. We can just say character.transform. This is for spawning the poison particles. And I love this because this is episode 96, I believe. So a lot of you guys right now you're the most adept out of everybody here. So I have the faith that you can just follow along and kind of know what's happening and keep up with what I'm doing, which is excellent. So character dot. Yeah, okay. We need to go call upon the character stats manager on our character manager because we actually need to access it now for poison damage. So on our character manager, let's say character stat manager or stats manager. Yeah, that's right. Call it over here, make it public. Make sure to call on awake, and in similar fashion with these scripts, it is always get component, at least if you're going about it with the same conventions as I am. So character stats manager equals get component, character stats manager. Okay, so Now on the tick input here, we can actually erase that and say player.isDead. This is on the input handler. Look at all these variables we have in the input manager. Look at all these we can literally delete. So let's rename player manager to player, and we can literally just torch so many of these. We don't need them. I don't think we need anything here except for the player controls because that's our input. Yeah, delete everything except for the input actions and the player manager. Everything else can go, literally everything. And that's going to save just all that stuff being called on awake when we don't need to do it. Excellent. Okay. Yep, get rid of that. Get rid of that. Yeah, we can get our UI manager is also on our player manager, so we can get rid of that. I'm going to double check that though. Yes, it is okay. I think our quick slots manager is actually able to be called to from our UI manager. So I'm going to call our blocking collider on our player manager. Let's get component and children for this one. You could keep that on the input manager if you want, or even the combat manager. I'm just going to put it on the manager, the player manager, because again, this is just the general hub for all things that need to be accessed from multiple scripts. But it would make sense to put something like a blocking collider on your combat manager if you like. That's just preference. I'm going to make a few headers here, one for input, one for UI, and one for camera, and then the rest I'll just call it player. I'm going to make this animator variable public. I think we already called that on the base class, so maybe this is pointless. I can probably erase this later, but for now I'll keep it there. We'll say header, and then we're going to say player. There we go. That's all of our extra components. That looks good. We can make another header too down here just for interactable. In my other project too, an idea if you want to do it, I'm not doing it here, but I actually have a thing called interactable manager. I actually use its own script to deal with interactables. Cool idea if you want to do that too. Okay, I'm going to get rid of all this now. My goodness, that looks so much better. That is excellent. Like, look at all of that space we just freed up and just stuff we didn't need to call. It's awesome. And I'm going to move the remainder up here, and we're good. I can even get rid of camera handler. Don't need you there either. So we just have the player now, and we just have the inputs itself, which is what our input manager is made for. So that's obviously, it should be there. We're good. Now we have all these errors though, and I think we can fix most of these by just putting player dot in front of everything. So yeah, here we go. This will be just to raise the input player dot UI manager. That's for referencing that. It really is just a game of obviously make sure you're calling the thing from the player manager. That's all it is. So right now, player stats manager. We're getting that from the player manager. So player dot player stats manager, just like that. So basically every error that you're going to get, don't freak out while doing this, is just reference that thing, but from the main script of your manager, your player manager, your enemy manager, or your character manager. And we're just really hooking stuff up again that way. I'm copying and pasting right now, just putting player in front of all this. So player.player inventory manager, you get it. I'm repeating myself so much, so for those of you who are listening and are uncertain, it is that simple. It is this just repetitive process. And again, I understand that some people may think that this is unnecessary, and in absoluteness, you're absolutely right, but it does save on memory, and it is a whole lot neater. And the project is getting massive at this point, so we want to try to keep on top of how neat and tidy we are, and I'm a stickler for that stuff. So let's just go down here now and kind of really patrol the script here and go through every function, because we're guaranteed we're going to have errors in almost every single one of these because they're all referencing something we had up there before. The only one that might be a little bit different is the player locomotion manager. And this is because we call the camera object in there. We have that saved on the camera handler. But we call it by transform, but that's easy because then we can just reference it by saying player manager.camera handler.camera object.transform.forward or .transform.right. Anyway, we'll cross the bridge when we get to it, but for those of you who are confused, don't worry, it'll be fine. I think I spelled this one wrong. No, that's good. Okay. Weapon slot manager, I spelled wrong, so I'm just going to paste player weapon slot manager. That was way back when we didn't even have different base classes. That's how old this code is, that's a long time. Okay. That looks good. There we go. That actually wasn't that long. Here we go. We got a weapon slot manager thing here happening again. Player weapon slot manager. Let's name something else now. And we are good to go, I think, on the input manager. So that knocked out 7 errors. That was very fast. Okay, we had a couple here. I missed a couple of these functions. There we go. Somehow messed the spelling up on that one. So terrible. Player.camera handler. Player.camera handler. There we go. Okay, now it looks good, I think. What we got? Let's see. Okay, so let's say player.UI manager. Same thing. There we go. And the reason why we're doing all this now is because I'm about to start a big process with the UI, and I want it to be as clean as possible. So before I jumped into it, I wanted to clean up all this stuff. So we have a very nice base. We're going to be able to equip our armor and our weapons and stuff from the UI, and we're going to be able to see our weapon stats, all that good stuff. We're going to really dive into that. Okay, so I'm just scanning here now in the player manager. I'm going to delete that region. I don't like that region. Get rid of that. Okay. And over here on the enemy animator manager, here we go. Delete those two, the boss manager and effect manager, and leave your enemy manager, rename it as an enemy. And the same principle, if we go through the script, what do we see? So our enemy, we're going to call upon that. Delete the animator component because that's actually accessible through our enemy. And here we go, enemy.enemy boss manager, just like that. Perfect. And then enemy.enemy effects manager, just like that. Excellent. Okay, I think that's good. Now, let's go to the enemy locomotion manager. Again, same thing, delete everything except for the enemy manager, call it enemy. And then we are going to go over to just basically every script. We're just going to look through all these scripts. So I'm going to go to the, yeah, that looks good. We can start doing this by errors too, honestly. So we start saving it, and then we see errors in the console. On the character weapon slot manager, this had a lot. This is the stats, effects, inventory, and animator. So get rid of all those. Call your character manager, and call all of those things from the character manager. So character.character inventory manager, and I think we actually need to call that because that's not currently on the character manager. So let's go do that. Let's go over here. Go to the character manager. That is a lot of errors. Okay, and let's call upon the, what did I just say? Was it the inventory manager? Yes, it was. Public character inventory manager. You start typing so long when you're doing these kinds of things, and I swear it all just blends together, and it's almost like you just go on autopilot and start doing it without thinking. All right, save that. Go back, and let's go and copy character dot and paste that here, and just the same process over and over again. The exact same thing with all three versions. So we have the character, enemy, and player, the character being the base class because we share data sometimes across all three. All right, there we go. That's good. Character.character effects manager. I don't think we got that one called. Let's go call that one. So back to our character manager, and we're going to call the character effects manager. And don't worry, for those of you who don't want to go through this process and our patrons of mine, obviously the scripts will be uploaded. So if you're here still typing, this is what the video is going to consist of. So I will leave the scripts if you get tripped up. Character.character inventory manager. That's good. There we go. Copy and paste. Copy and paste. There we go. That looks good. That looks good. That looks good. For those of you who are still listening to my voice right now while doing this, if you guys want to go ahead and drop a like on the video, it would be greatly appreciated. It does really help the series out. Alright guys, let's jump over to the character effects manager. Let's see what we got on the go over here. Looks good actually. Now on the character animator manager, we can get rid of that animator component. We can get rid of the stats manager component. We're going to leave obviously the rig builder and the hand-eye constraints. We're going to rename character manager to character. We're going to leave anything to do with rigging, obviously, because that is specifically an animator quality, so we'll keep that there. Then we'll say character.animator, and I think I need to make that public because it's not giving me accessibility. Oh, we actually don't even have an animator component. Okay, so we use an animator on both the enemy and player, so let's call that here public animator, and we'll call that on awake, animator equals get component, animator. Obviously, the enemy and the player will both use an animator component. So back over here now on the, where am I, character weapon slot manager, it looks like. Again, the same thing. Just click those errors, guys. Really just kind of drill through them. Character.animator, you get it. The process is very much the same. Okay, so character effects manager, what we got here? Back on the character animator manager again. I'm jumping all over the place. Character.animator, you get it. Do the same thing. You're probably getting a boatload of errors here because before we had the animator on the script, and now we have it on the main character class. So every function in this, I'm pretty sure, uses the animator variable. So just go down through every single one, do the same thing. Invulnerable, can do combo is pairing, disable is pairing, yada, yada, yada. There we go. Looks good. Okay, yep, character stats manager. That's one we didn't have. That's good. Looks good. Okay. Ignore my debug.log. Yeet. Okay. Excellent. Now, how many errors we got? 42. All right, not bad. So on the enemy weapon slot manager, character.character stats manager, And the same thing is true for. The reason why is because we actually get the base class of the character weapon slot manager. We don't do much different on the enemy weapon slot manager. There we go. That's good. So now over here on the pursue target state, we're actually going to eradicate everything except for the enemy manager. Because in the future, as we add more scripts, we have to keep adding more to this state tick. But now this saves us so much time because we erase everything except for enemy manager, and we call everything through the enemy manager. So in the future, if we add another script, for example, I don't know, like flying manager, and we want the AI to fly, we don't have to put that here and change every single state script that we make. We can just call it through the enemy manager. I don't know. I have no idea why I didn't do this from the very beginning. It actually dawned upon me like a few months ago. It just hit me in the head like a rock, and I was like, wow, this is this is a much better way. I don't know why I didn't do this. And in the future, we're going to change spells to do the same. So right now, spells call upon the camera manager, and again, this is just the same thing, guys, so I'm talking over it as I go. Just change all your states so they only have the enemy manager, and change it to enemy. And wherever you have an error, call your enemy manager, and then dot that script. So if you have enemy stats manager, you would say enemy.enemy stats manager. But yeah, it just dawned upon me. And for spells, it's excellent because spells we utilize the camera, the combat manager, the stats manager, and when scaling is into the equation in the future, we get to do so much more. So like instead of calling everything and having like 10 variables in one function, we just have the one. It's just infinitely nicer. Okay, so on the state tick again, I'm just doing every single state here. I'm changing the enemy manager to enemy, and I'm erasing everything else. And lastly, the base state, just everything except for the enemy manager, rename that to enemy, and we're good to go. We just added a whole bunch of errors to the project, so that's great. I think in about another 20 minutes to this, guys, and we should be good. I think we're mostly through the thick of it now, so enemy.animator.setFloat, there we go, and enemy.animator.setFloat. Don't get tripped up if you put enemy in front of enemy animator manager, and then the enemy animator manager tries to reference the animator, you're going to get an error if you're following me, because I moved the animator to the enemy manager. That was a mouthful, but yeah, if you're following along, you know what's up. So, and regardless, this is very easy anyway. You'll see what's happening. If you're at this point in the series and you made it here, then you're fine. Don't sweat it. Okay, let's erase. No, put that there. Enemy.enemy animator manager. That's good. Okay, save. All right, idle state. Enemy stats. That's going to give me an error because I think it's stats manager. This is old code too. This is before there was a base class, I think. So, enemy stats manager, yes. Save. Regions. Why did I ever like using those? Oh man. Okay, attack state. Here we go. Enemy.animator. So I'm just erasing the animator manager component of this. And that should be fine. Why is that giving me grief? Oh, that's giving me grief because I haven't renamed my enemy animator or my enemy manager. And I also haven't gotten rid of the other variable here. So let's do that. Let's get rid of the enemy animator manager. Let's do the same thing below too, because it looks like we've done the same thing below here where we have attack target with combo. We're calling upon both the enemy animator manager and the enemy manager. We don't need to do that. And let's rename this to enemy because it just looks so much nicer. Okay, there we go. Now we will say enemy.animator. I'm very excited to start the UI too. I have a lot of really cool ideas for that. We're going to make it so we display the weapon stats on the screen. When we do scaling in the future, we're going to showcase that. It's going to be really cool. All right, so let's save that. That looks good. Okay, now over to the ambush state. Do the same thing. I'm sure you've got it by now. If you're still listening to my voice, then bless you. Wonderful, we're in this together. Enemy animator manager, enemy.animator.setFloat. Oh, missed a period. There we go. Looks good. Looks wonderful. All right, save that. Minimize that. Let's click the errors. Here we go. Attack target with combo. This is because we're still referencing our enemy animator manager. We don't need to. Just erase that. I just shut down for a second. Try to put enemy in front of it. Let's erase that there, and then we're good to go. Okay, save. Double click the errors. Repeat the process. What do we got here? What's happening here? Okay. Oh, this is adding souls when an enemy dies. So we say enemy. You can say enemy.characterStatsManager, or you can say enemy.enemyStatsManager. The reason why you can do this is because the base class is available to the class that comes after it. Okay. On the draw arrow, action script, we can say player.animator, and that's good. We're all golden there. Let's minimize that now and follow the errors again. We don't have any left now. We're getting down to the last few. So animator.delta position will be enemy.animator delta position. This is true for delta rotation. Same thing. Okay, and then we have, this would just be enemy.animator. Same is true here. I forgot the dot both times. Why is that giving me grief? Did I do something wrong? What's happening? Okay, scroll up. What's up, Seb? Enemy boss manager. Oh, this is enemy boss manager. Okay, so on the enemy boss manager, I'm going to erase everything except for the boss combat stand state and the boss health bar. This is because in the future, this is going to go somewhere else, but right now, let's not worry about that. And I'm still going to reference my enemy manager. So let's put that up here. If you want to do it differently, by all means, do it. If you want to move both those things to enemy manager, you can do that. By all means. It won't make a difference. So let's call that there and say enemy dot, this is old code too, enemy stats manager. This is back when we first made our max health. Whoa, okay, cool. Save, excellent. All right, so now we're going into the, where are we to? Enemy manager, and anything that is calling upon the animator, just delete it. That's in front of the animator rather. So before we'd be saying enemy animator manager.animator, now on the enemy manager, it's just animator. That looks fine. Same thing down here. Excellent. All right, guys, save. Cool. Follow the errors. Only, was that 13? Cool. Awesome. Okay, so the character animator manager. Oh, we forgot to delete this from Awake. That was an easy one. Save. All right. Okay, on the handle state machine, erase everything except for this, because now we're only passing this being the enemy manager. So much more nice. On the player animator manager, erase the animator being called on Awake because we don't have that variable anymore. I didn't catch that one either. And then erase the locomotion manager. What are you hiding there? Erase all that. Erase the input handler too. And now we're only going to call upon our player manager. And we'll reference both of those things from that. We'll call it player. And on Awake, player equals get component player manager. And then down here, it will be player.animator.setFloat for vertical and player.animator.setFloat for horizontal. And then it will be player.playerLocomotionManager. I'm either spelling something wrong or I don't have that called the same thing. And player.animator delta position. Let's go back to the player manager and see what's up there. I mean, that might be old code. I think that's another copy back where it was just called player locomotion. Yes, that is old code. Let's erase the animator because we have it on the base class. We don't need it there. It's getting it from character manager. Now, the player locomotion manager. Here we go. Whoa, player locomotion. Let's add a manager to that. Let's rename it so we don't have to copy and paste it in the script. And we're good to go. Yeah, back when it was just called player locomotion because there was no enemy locomotion manager. All right, save. Good to go. I have so many scripts open right now. We have to dump like basically the whole folder into the into the resources for this lesson. Okay, let's go to the, where am I? I think we're on the heavy attacks. So player.animator. I think that's the only one. Yeah, we're good. Okay, cool. Next one. This is fire arrow. So this will be player again .animator. We are good to go. Save that. We're not going to touch the spells in this video, although I really want to. I'll wait and do that in the next housekeeping video. I will torture you no more after this. Okay, so up here on the player combat manager, ice everything, delete it all. Look at all those variables that we don't need to call. Amazing. I'm way too happy doing this. Player manager, just call upon that, call on Awake, and by now you totally know what I'm going to do. It's going to come to no surprise. Player inventory manager, and the process continues. You see here, this is where we're casting a spell here. It says successfully cast spell. I'm fighting right now going into this and just changing that too, but that's a whole other small rabbit hole. We'll save that for when we expand upon our spells further. We'll do it all in one video. What am I doing wrong here? So yeah, if I go into here even just to peep it for like a second, look. Right now we're calling upon our stats manager, weapon slot manager, camera manager. There's just so much there, and if we add more in the future, we have to call upon more and change every spell. Every spell script needs to change. But if we just call upon the player manager, that won't be the case. Won't be the case at all. All right, so player manager. Oh, I see what's happening there. I I said player manager, but it's just supposed to be player. We're good. We're good. Okay. So I have to make a note of the time right now. 32 minutes. So let's go down here. Same process. Anything where there's player and manager, just erase the manager part, and just leave it with player. We're good. And then come down here. Player inventory manager, player.input handler. You get it. The process is the same. Player.transform.position. We're going to get to one in a minute, though, where it might confuse a couple people, so I'm going to explain it a bit further. It might not. It's probably fine if you know what's up. Nothing scary. Just we have to do one extra step. Let's go over here now to the player combat manager. And I still left this here. What am I doing? Right here. Player manager. It's just supposed to be player.is using left hand. Just erase that, and we're good to go. Okay. All right, save that. Double click the next error. Handle light weapon combo. That's just player.animator instead of player.animator manager. Save that. Next one. So that is the same thing. It'd be player.animator.runtime controller. We're good. Save that. That's when we were assigning our controller. All that's giving me grief, so I guess I haven't called the player manager here. Let's scroll up and see what's on the go. Yes, okay. So on the player weapon slot manager, delete everything. Delete it all. Everything. And then place it in the player manager. It's the trend of the video. Destroy everything. And then put it in the player manager. Okay. So, same thing, player. Now, on the quick slots UI, I think we actually referenced this from our player UI manager, so I'm going to check that in a second. So we actually don't need to call that the player manager. You can if you want. Totally up to you. It doesn't hurt. But what I'm saying is we can access it through the player manager by going to the UI manager first. Everything else, just put player dot. You get it. We're good. Okay. This is fine. Quick slots UI, same thing there, so we'll investigate that in a second. Player effects manager, that looks good. Not getting any errors here. Player. I just made a mistake. Okay. Scroll back up. Now let's go over here to the so on the UI manager, make quick slots UI public. And then we can just say player.UI manager.quickslots UI. Now alternatively too, you can call that on the player manager if you like. It's all the same. That's completely up to you. I'll leave that in your hands. I'm going to do it this way. Okay, player.UI manager.quickslots UI. There we go. All good. What's giving me grief? I thought I got everything. Oh, I see what's happening here. I said player.player manager. Player.lock on transform. We're good. Save that. One error remaining. The lonely error. Okay. Player.animator. Look at that. And we're good? Maybe? No, it's giving me grief. Look at it. Look at these useless scripts. Delete them all. All of them. Toast them. Just delete them. And then, can you guess what I'm going to do? Can you guess? We're going to call upon the player manager. Also, delete this my transform variable. I don't know why I did that either. It's just so silly thinking back on it. We can just reference the transform of the script because it's just the same thing really. So delete that and then player manager. Player, and wherever we reference my transform, I'm just going to say player.transform. Player being the transform of the script player manager. Let's actually call this player manager because then we can do a trick where we just rename it and it'll change everything in the script. So let's just rename player. There we go. I got 23 references, saves a bit of time. Okay, so delete this, delete that, all the other variables here, call it an awake that we no longer need. Delete my transform and camera object. And this is the one that I was referencing that might find you a little bit confusing, but I'll walk you through when we get there. So, coming down here now, let's say player.input handler. Then it's player.camera handler up here. So all these are fine, but right here, no, actually, that's fine. That's fine too. Never mind. Disregard what I'm about to say. Okay. Current lock composition. Move amount. That's all good. Here we go. Okay. Camera object. So before we had a reference to the camera object here, but we can get that through player.camerahandler. Okay. But it's still going to give you an error. So what you want to do, I'm just going to go to the camera handler to show you where it is. You can see if we scroll up here, it is right here, the camera object public, right? We actually need to transform this because before we would actually say this is a transform, not a camera variable itself. So all we need to do is say camera object, and then we just say transform.forward. So before we would save that as a transform, But we don't need to call that twice because it's already being saved on the camera handler. Sorry, my voice is starting to give out. I've been talking for so long. So let's say player.inputHandler, same thing there. And again, cameraObject.write, we'll say player.camerahandler.cameraObject.transform.write, and that will be the exact same thing. And that's the only hiccup I was referencing that it might trip a couple people up, but probably not if you're at episode 96. I assume you have a very adept understanding at least of what's going on, and most of you probably very advanced. Okay, player.transformRotation, we good? That looks good. Player.transformRotation. So wherever you see my transform, it's just player.transform.rotation. That's good. That's good. So again, camera object, the same thing we have here. It will be player.camerahandler.cameraObject.transform and then dot whatever direction. So in my case, it's forward. And then you can apply the same logic down here with right. And we are almost done now. I know for a fact we're getting close to burning through every script that is attached to the managers. So let's fix this here, fix that. Okay, guys, player.input. And these are all my transform again. Same thing, just player.transform.rotation, that will be, instead of my transform.rotation. You know, as I made this series with you guys, I changed a lot of the ways I just the style I write in. It's not bad or different to say my transform and declare transform. I just would prefer to reference the script itself a lot of times. I don't know why I did that in the past. I think it's just something I learned from somebody and just I liked that at the time. I recognize that I can be very picky over the way I write, and I encourage you to write whatever way makes you comfortable. If I do something that you don't like or agree with in the sense of style, like do it your own way for sure. Okay, player.transformForward. There we go. And again, anything where it says my transform, if you're following me, player.transformForward. So the player animator manager would be player.playerAnimator manager. And we are good, I think. Let's see. Why is this giving me grief? Why are you giving me grief? Okay, it's not. It just took a long time to load. Visual Studios is being slow. Oh, no, it's because I had it named Animation Manager. I think that was an older name we had. Now it's called Animator Manager. Okay, change that. Player.transform.position. And then we're going to say player.transform.position. Player.transform.position. Player.player stats manager. Player.input manager. I enjoy doing this, by the way, in case if you're wondering. Like this to me, great time, wonderful time. All these sick naming conventions, it's like the most awesome part about coding. It's a nice flow you get going. All right, so paste that down there. Make sure you're calling upon the camera's transform before you reference direction. So forward or right, that is the camera object. Player.inputHandler, player.inputHandler. We've got to be close to the bottom here now. This is the last couple. I think there's a few errors I might have missed. It looks like in Visual Studios it's indicating that I've scrolled past some things. I'm renaming this to Animator Manager because this was called before Animation Manager. It's not what it's called anymore. Save that. Okay, player.camerahandler. There we go. I missed a couple. Why did I do that twice? Everything is starting to look the same. All right, so now if I save, we have some errors back here still in the player locomotion. So the same thing as before. These errors are involving the camera direction and the input handler's location. Let's just reference that here now by calling upon the transform. This one's a bit more annoying because I can't just copy and paste player dot to everything, so it's taking a bit more time. Looks good. Looks good. Can put a space there. There we go. Looks good. Player.inputHandler, player.statsManager, player.inputHandler. Man, take a shot every time I've said player in this video. My goodness. Okay. Player.animator manager. That's not animation manager. This script is old. It's got old code. You can tell. Way back when we started the series. We've come so far. Player.inputHandler. There we go. Oh man, awesome. No more errors in the Visual Studios. What we got left? Come on, show me nothing. Oh yeah, nothing. Excellent. So if I go through, look through my scripts now, rather, we still got a couple things to look for though. So I'm going to actually go to the player manager, and I'm just gonna literally just space this out so it just looks a bit neater. And I recognize this is awake, but I just want it to look more readable. And we have to call our blocking collider too, because we didn't do that. So blocking collider, you probably did it, I didn't do it, is equal to get component in children blocking collider. We're calling that on our player manager. Before this was called on the input handler. We've moved it over here since then. So save that. I'm going to move these norm vector and target position up here. Not sure why they're below the start and awake. This is a very old script, so I'll forgive myself for that. I'm going to put private in front of the start because that looks strange. Don't like the look of that. It's giving me the heebie-jeebies. Okay, and the player stats manager, erase that animator manager. I'll make the stamina and focus point bar public just for debugging purposes, because we're going to do something in the future with those where we're going to add a second bar above under it that shows how much damage you take. I digress. Ignore my trailing off. Again, player animator manager, same thing. These last couple of scripts now, I'm just going to check to make sure we've done it for every single player script, so we don't have to come back to this in the future. And again, I know this is a lot of work right now, guys, but in the future, it will be so worth it, because when we add anything else to the game, we just reference it from one place. We don't have to go through a bunch of scripts and call it. It's nice. All right, so on the player equipment manager, bulldoze everything that is not the player manager, except for your model changers, because that is a player equipment manager exclusive. That's how we equip our armor. So inventory, input manager, whatever, erase that. Then you're just left with the player manager. And do the same thing, get component player manager, player.player inventory manager. I am not used to speaking for this long. I think my voice is starting to break up. Okay, so player.player inventory manager, same thing here. This is called player inventory here. This is, again, old code. Back before the enemy also had an inventory manager. We had base classes. Player.player stats manager. I think that's stat manager. Did I get that wrong? What am I misspelling here? Nope, yep, okay. Stats manager just took a long time for Visual Studio to queue in. And player.player stats manager, again, same thing. Player inventory manager. I'm just going to actually copy and paste this here because I don't want to retype all this. Player.player inventory manager, we're good to go. Player.player stats manager, good to go. Player.player stats manager, again. And the same is true without down here. Everything is just the same function, just call it all from the base class. So we're nearing the end of this now because there's only I think one more script to do after this. So I'm just going to talk over the video now while I do this. And because again, the process is exactly the same. I trust now by this point in the video you understand what's happening. The next video, we're going to start our UI system. And I say start, we've already started before, but we're really going to dive into it, and we're going to lay the foundation for equipping the armor on screen, and we're going to start setting up a lot of the actual visual components of it. We're going to do things like show stat info on screen. If you guys would like to, I can cover it so you can change the screen like Souls does, where you can display the item's lore or description in the center. If that's something you're interested in, let me know. And we're going to really try to get all the main foundation of it all down first. So we're in the player stats manager, erase the player animator manager on awake if you have that error, the same as me. And I'm just going to click the rest of these scripts. I think we only have one left to check, and it's the effects manager. Yes, this is the last one. So here we go. Hoorah. Delete these two and make this, or call upon the player manager, and the same process ensues. Delete any references of the stats and weapon manager and call it from saying player.stats weapons manager. Looks like we're not actually using that for a reason. Well, I'm not sure why that was even there. Oh, no, we got some errors. We were using that. It just didn't give me an error right away. So yeah, we're going to dive into the UI in the next episode. We'll start by laying out the items itself, and we'll show the stats on screen, and we'll go from there. So on awake here, player equals get component player manager. Player, and we do need another one of these housekeeping videos because I still have a list of things I want to polish and touch up and make more efficient, not in terms of functionality, but actually gameplay wise, make things look sharper and smoother and nicer. But I'll save that for a few weeks away. I don't want to do two of these right in a row because let's actually get back to adding some more logic to the game. All right, so if I press play, do we have an error? Yes, we do. And my head is okay. We have no head, so we do have an error. Oh, here's the error. I accidentally referenced player manager on awake as its own independent. I made a typo. Just don't mind me. Okay, we're good to go. So we're good. That looks great, and that is basically the end of this video, guys. Please don't forget to drop a like. It really does help the series a lot. We're back on track with the Soul series. I consider the character creation screen a part of the Soul series, but I know a lot of you wanted to come back to regular content. So here we are. And now in the next one, we're going to go and start hammering away at the UI system, and then we're going to come back and do some new features and polishes on the AI. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Talk soon.